Hi, I'm hopping on to share a message with you, and I have a lot of notes here, so I'm going to try, it's like 2 pages. I'm going to try to get through all of them and condense it a little bit, or else this video is going to be too long. But I recorded a video not long ago that was about the process of cocooning and reemerging, and I wanted to speak a little bit more about that. I'm going to be referring to my notes off and on because I know I'll forget something if I don't. But what I want to start off by saying is that, and what I first started off by writing down here is that we are creator beings. But when we're in fight or flight, we can't create. And what I'm talking about when I say we are creator beings, it's not just when we think of creators, we think of people who are creating art or even nowadays online content or someone writing a book. I'm not just talking about that, although I am talking about that too. But I want to extend the idea of creator beings to include manifestation of any kind. When we are pulling in our manifestations, in other words, like the life that we desire, we are co-creating with the universe, with God, with spirit. So that is the creation process as well. When I say we are creator beings, that's what I'm speaking to. It is inherent to our very essence as human beings. And fight or flight can really distort our creations. It can really distort the energy that we draw in, creating complications, delays, and a lot of frustrating things that I think none of us really like to experience. And so because of that, I've really thought a lot and taught a lot about a multi-stage process for honoring the fact that we do have a nervous system that creates fight or flight, while also allowing for the fact that we are creator beings and we're not meant to stay in that place. There is a process, though, that we often need to go through to get from point A to point B when we are triggered. And so I want to speak to the process of when we're triggered, but also to moments in time in our lives where the trigger seems to be chronic. Those are two different kinds of experiences that I want to make sure to speak to. As I've mentioned before in other videos, it's really important when we experience a fight or flight trigger of some sort in our nervous system that we honor a moment of sacred pause. In that moment, what I want to emphasize is that the trigger is the teacher. It is showing us something that we need to learn about ourselves, about our lives, about what it is that we need to alter, to modify in order to course correct and get back on track as a soul in terms of where it is that we're meant to go. And even if we're not talking spiritually, just to honor the fact that whatever trigger went off in our body indicates that something in our environment is no longer working for us and a boundary needs to be set, or some sort of better care needs to be taken of ourselves in some way, in some aspect of our lives. Our moments of trigger, even though they feel awful and we'd rather never experience them, there is something magical about them from the standpoint of energy at a spiritual level, if you want to think of it as your higher self, or spirit, God, however you want to frame it, is showing up for you in that moment and asking for your attention, asking for you to notice something, asking for you to remember something about who you are or what you came here to do. There's something happening there that I think is very important. In the moment, though, your primary job is simply to offer yourself a sacred pause so that you can reflect deeply about what it is that this trigger is trying to teach you about your life and your circumstance. Okay. So, in situations where life has become a constant trigger, and what I mean by constant trigger is that in moments in life where your resource is chronically depleted, and in somatic experiencing terminology, when your window of tolerance is very narrow. In those moments in life, sometimes there can be seasons, chapters where we just feel like everything is hitting too hard. Even mild amounts of exposure to stress, it's putting us into fight or flight. When we're in that state, it's very important not to judge the fact that you're in that state, that you're in a season. It can be really frustrating. It can be like, why am I so sensitive? Why is everything bothering me? Why is it that this person doesn't seem to be as sensitive to the situation and I'm struggling, I'm having a hard time? I think it's super important to not cross compare, because when you're in a season of high sensitivity, your window of tolerance is very small, and it's very small for a reason. That's not a mistake. It's signifying that there is a longer sacred pause that's needed, that you're being invited into. And whether or not you want to, you'll often find that you have to. Because these seasons can be really overwhelming and really demand that we go inward. And the more that we try to push through that and continue on, the more that we start to sort of unravel. Oftentimes people can't take anymore. I'm up to here. I'm fed up. I can't handle it, right? When you reach that place, it's time for a season of retreat. And this is what in the previous video I was talking about as cocooning. So cocooning is not in reference to the trigger that goes off on a random day. Cocooning to me is about acknowledging that my nervous system is chronically depleted, and therefore I have some bigger repair work to do. In order to do that, I really need to retreat into silence and stillness. What I often try to help people give themselves permission to do is to really simplify life for a while, is to really pay attention to the areas that are overstressing your nervous system and to draw a boundary, protecting yourself from those things, acknowledging that that boundary may not be needed forever, but it's needed for this season. And so what this may look like is I'm going to work and I'm getting the things that I need to get done in order to continue to take care of the day-to-day demands of life. But beyond that, I am nourishing myself. I am taking baths, I'm taking walks, I'm meditating, I'm spending time with people who really feel rejuvenating for me. I am spending a lot of time with God. I am using whatever restorative practices really help you replenish. I'm eating really high quality food. I'm creating a schedule for myself that has a lot of white space, meaning it's not like one thing after another in my schedule. There's spaces in between where I have a chance to reflect and to hit the reset button before I have to move on to the next thing. A cocooning season means creating a life of softness for a while. And when I say for a while, you don't need to go into it knowing how long this is going to last. You're going to let your body tell you how long this needs to last. And I think that's really important. And so you enter this state of cocooning that then allows you to start to replenish your nervous system. What I often think of the nervous system as is like the cellular membrane around a cell. And that cellular membrane, when it's healthy, it allows the good nutrients to come in and it keeps the pathogens out. It's semi-permeable in that way. But when we get chronically depleted in our resource, it's like that cellular membrane has become tattered. It's easily getting bombarded with pathogen, and there's not a healthy way for that cell to protect itself and maintain the nutrients that are needed. And so this period of cocooning is all about repairing that cellular membrane so that it can function well for us as we go about our lives when we're done with the cocoon period. People will often wonder, how do I know when it's time to start to emerge from my cocoon phase? I think that the main component to figuring out if you're ready to emerge is that you'll start to feel really contained, and that'll feel irritating. So this cocooning period, you're drawing in your membrane very tight to you. You're letting your cocoon container be close to you. After a while, when you're starting to feel ready for this phase to be over, that space will feel really small, and you'll want to break out. Sometimes out of fear, though, people will resist that knowing. And so they'll feel the discomfort of, I don't like how it feels to feel this contained. And they won't necessarily allow themselves to acknowledge that that means it's time to move out of the cocoon phase, because fear is telling them that it's safer to be uncomfortable in here. So sometimes we need some nudging to move beyond the cocoon phase. And that's completely normal and okay. Please do not judge that either. Remember that this is a healing process. It's not linear. There's going to be moments when you feel as though the thought of emerging from the cocoon is a trigger in and of itself. And so let yourself respond to that trigger, just like we've talked about. Retreating, honoring the sacred pause, getting the information from that trigger, which in this case would be, I'm scared to emerge from this cocoon. What do I need to do in order to make myself feel more safe? Do you see how getting this information then allows you to acknowledge that the fear is interfering with the process and that you are being asked to create safety for yourself as you move from one phase to the next? This is a really transformational stage. It's not necessarily easy. I wonder sometimes if a butterfly is actually in a little bit of pain as they're emerging from the cocoon, right? Like it's kind of a messy process. So let it be messy, let it be informative. As you are emerging, it's not going to be a quick thing. It's not like tomorrow I'm starting this new routine. Instead, let yourself be in this in-between for a while where you are dipping your toe into more and more exposure to things that would normally have triggered you, and you're allowing yourself to feel the way that feels in your body. Does it feel tolerable? Does it feel like your window of tolerance has expanded enough to allow for that exposure to be something that you can navigate. And that doesn't mean navigate easily, because this phase is about stretching. So imagine taking a rubber band and stretching it. You don't want the rubber band to snap, but you do want it to stretch. And by that I mean you're learning how to test how wide your window of tolerance is. And in order to grow your window of tolerance a little bit more, you might have to stretch that rubber band and allow yourself to feel the discomfort, that boundary where it's just beyond a feeling of complete safety, and let yourself regulate there for a bit. And then come back and kind of celebrate the fact that you did something different, that you did something new, that was hard and you did it. And then you do it again, and then you do it again. Over time, this period becomes about widening your window of tolerance more and more as you stretch further and further back into areas of your life that you had retreated from. Keeping in mind that your retreat might have taught you that there are certain areas of your life you don't want to go back to, and that's okay too. It means that you're emerging from this cocoon phase with a lot of new information about yourself that then you can go in and implement into this new chapter of your life, one that may involve some editing, that may involve adding in some new elements, because the cocoon phase is so informative and it's so unique to the individual. When you've been navigating this in-between phase for a while, what you'll find is that over time your window of tolerance gets back to its normal size. You can tolerate quite a bit. You've done the work of widening that space where you don't feel like you're being kicked into fight or flight every time you go out and do something new, because you've done the inner work of healing whatever needed healing in the cocooning and even in the in-between work. When you've done this enough times, what you start to enter is a new phase where you have an immense amount of self-trust. This is sort of the gem that comes out of this process, this gift that I feel like you're given after you cross a certain threshold in the work, because the self-trust came from you teaching yourself, I got my own back. I'm no longer going to thrust myself into overwhelming situations and just see if I can survive. Instead, you know that you've cultivated a strong and healthy inner parent that always has its eyes on your well-being, and that will come and retrieve you and will bring you back to a place of safety and security when you feel like you have been overexposed again, that you have a method in place for taking really good care of yourself, and most importantly, that you're listening. That you're listening and that you're noticing and that you're attuning. Just like when a parent does that with a child, that creates so much trust in that dynamic between the two, that the trust is what creates attachment security when the child grows up. So this process is all about creating attachment security in a reparenting kind of way, in a somatic inner reparenting kind of way, where over time, this is not immediate, but over time, you're rewiring your sense of safety and security in the world, because you know you have a solid inner parent that has your back. And that's something that you might have never had when you were a kid. So do you see how it's like this golden thread that starts to stitch closed a wound that had been open for a really long time? It's very powerful, is what I'm saying. But it is a process that takes time, and it does take a lot of humility, because it means that you can't just be like, go, 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 hustle, hustle, all the grit, all the time. It means that you have to be listening to what's happening on the inside and very responsive to seasons where it's time to go inward, even if it means that you can't yet continue forward in that moment toward a goal that you set. That's why I'm saying, like, it's hard on the ego to do this work, but doing this work allows you to then step forward even more powerfully in the future. So it's like you're going back and you're filling the cracks in your foundation. You're laying a stronger foundation down for there to be a moment in the future where you can step forward powerfully in a way you never could have otherwise. And so what I wrote down here is that here you're able to step into your power when you reach this place. And this is what the trigger was preparing you for all along. This is what I was saying, like circling back to the beginning, how perhaps some of these triggers are orchestrated, that when you reach this phase, you can look back at the trigger and the wisdom that they were infusing in you at the time, that they led you through a process, they led you down a path that ultimately allowed you to expand into your greatest self. Moving forward, it really leaves you with this powerful new way of looking at triggers in general. And I want to leave you with that perspective, because you might be in the middle middle of trigger right now. You might be in a season of a lot of trigger. And so it might feel really heavy and frustrating. So I wanted to bring this perspective to you and allow you to see that there is a process that you can walk through and that would lead you ultimately to unlock this deeper level of who you always were. This was always inside of you. It's just that as human beings, we have to go through a lot to access our most powerful self. And we're always in a state of sinking deeper and deeper into a knowing, an understanding, a remembering about who that person is. Okay, so then I just wanted to read something that I wrote in relation to this. And I can't even necessarily remember what it says, but I'm going to read it anyway. I feel like I wrote it down for a reason. So what it says is, when something from the past comes up for another wave of healing, the medicine is silence and stillness. That silence, that stillness is sacred because your history is holy. Because in that moment, it's your history that's coming up in some ways. That's what the trigger is about. But beyond that, what it is that you're being given a divine assignment. What assignment are you being given? That's a question maybe to sit with. And to some degree, it's the question that we're sitting with while we're in the cocoon. Ultimately, though, what's happening in this work is that you're learning to discern the ache in your spirit and trace it back to the breath of God. The reason that I wrote this is that I feel like when we do arrive at that place, when we are feeling like we're stepping a little bit more boldly into who we always were and starting on this path of remembering our power, for me personally, that sense of power comes from a reminder that the Holy Spirit lives in us, literally, that it is what we're accessing when we are really gently tending to ourselves and our needs, and when we are tapping into our voice, tapping into our creative potential. That's what I was referencing at the end there. So I hope that's helpful. I did want to pull one card for you. I already shuffled actually before I started recording. I just thought it would be really interesting to see what comes out at the end of a video like this. So let's see together. What do we have for the collective of people here who might be listening now and in the future and who might really connect with this message? The Magician. That's so amazing. Oh my gosh. That's so amazing. So I write little messages to myself on these cards, and what I wrote on the Magician is divine co-creator. That's what you are. That's what this process is all about. It allows you to use all of the tools that you have available to you, the tools that we discussed. It literally was just 3-3-13 on my timer. So if threes are significant to you, there you go. What's so cool about the fact that there were threes on the timer is that in the tarot, there is a card called the Three of Cups, and the Three of Cups is all about co-creation. It's all about working together to create something amazing. So how phenomenal that we got the Magician and that those numbers were on the timer. At the bottom, another 3. So at the bottom is the 3 of Wands, and the 3 of Wands is all about sacred timing and waiting for your next chapter to roll in. It's this moment of, oh my gosh, the journey that it's taken me to get here. And yet here I am, and I know that amazing things are coming. This is you. This is you. It's such an honor and a pleasure every time I get a chance to do one of these videos for you. So thank you so much, and I'll be back again soon. Bye.